he said to me at a young age when I just got into the restaurant business, he says, Tony, you can have a busy restaurant, but if you're not there, it won't be successful.
Yes.
Because ultimately what you want to do is even though you just introduced my restaurant, Park House Eatery, I love that people say, hey, let's go to Park House for a great brunch or a wonderful dinner and a nice bottle of wine. But what I strive for is people to say, hey, let's go see Tony.
Same business, different day.
Good afternoon and welcome back to the Same Business, Different Day podcast. Let's introduce my vote for the 2020 podcast co-host of the year, Alyssa Lee Good. I appreciate you being here. We appreciate all your hard work at all times. We really do. And, how you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
Is that a thing, the podcast task?
Oh, podcast co-host of the year is absolutely a thing. If it wasn't a thing, then we would make that up and you would be number one.
That's what I'm thinking. Let's make it up.
Let's make it up.
I want a trophy.
All right, let's get that trophy. Let's get that trophy. Can you help us out? I want to talk a little bit about the mission of the podcast. Can you break that down for us?
So this is Same Business, Different Day. We're here to talk about entrepreneurship, what it means to be a business owner. We want to learn. I want to learn and inspire others, people who are listening, someone who wants to start their own business and wants a little inspiration, wants to hear from someone who's done it before. Yeah. That's why we're here.
That's right. And our guest today has done it.
That's right.
And we're happy to have him here for many reasons. Today's guest I would call a friend. Our kinship is natural, never forced. We don't see each other often, but when we do, it's always a joy. But that goes back to when we first met, sitting at the bar. I was at a client's place, and we just got into a conversation about tequila.
Absolutely.
It all started from there. We talk a lot about networking on this podcast. If we learned anything during the pandemic, networking becomes much more difficult when you're sitting at home, right? An entrepreneur, a family man, and a tequila man. Three of my favorite things in no particular order. Tony Loiacono, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Alyssa, can you tell Tony the rules, please?
We have just one rule on this podcast. We want to get to know you first before we talk about your professional life.
Sounds good.
So let's just talk about you, and then when it feels right, we will reveal what you do and then get into that part of it.
Okay.
So here we go.
I started in diapers in 1970.
Where?
What?
In El Paso, Texas.
El Paso, okay.
The border city. And it gets a lot of news nowadays. And it got a lot of news back when I was growing up and living in El Paso, and it was primarily because as a young kid, we wanted to go over there and have shots of tequila and beer.
Okay.
At the age of 15.
Oh, no.
But digress. Back in El Paso, Texas, born in 1970. Enjoyed El Paso for 23 years, and most people like to be known as being from El Paso rather than actually living in El Paso. But has a special place in my heart. Has a wonderful Mexican food and fantastic sunsets.
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah. But like I said, lived there until I was 23 and wanted to get out just to enjoy the world and see what else it had to offer. So I moved from El Paso to Austin, Texas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, how far is that from El Paso?
That's about an 8.5-hour drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Austin, and Austin is getting a lot of good news today nowadays as well.
It's a killer city.
Yeah, it is. It's so much fun. But now, tell us what your parents did as you were growing up.
My mom was a stay-at-home mother.
Okay.
She raised myself and my sister. And my dad moved from Chicago, Illinois. They moved from Chicago, Illinois in 1969 because they were in a big city, and from the political riots and whatnot, they wanted to get away from all that. And like I said, the sunsets were fantastic. Property was cheap, so they moved in 69. They had me in the belly. My sister was already here. And my dad he worked at insurance claims, and he worked workman's comp claims. And El Paso offered a lot of business for him, being in a border city. There were a lot of people that had several different aliases and said that they couldn't work, but they were working. And
right.
So he was able to get into his niche there and really explode.
He made a good name for himself there.
Yeah. I think one of the bigger names is J.J. Arms, and he was a private investigator, sort of the Hollywood investigator, if you will, of Texas.
Okay.
Southwest. Wow. Yeah. And so my dad, he saw a lot of opportunity, so he went there and he did well.
Okay. Now, how much influence did that have on you? I mean, considering your current industry, that the unmentionable at this point, did was your dad a mentor in that way? At least maybe his work ethic, if nothing else.
He was absolutely a mentor. He worked for a company called Equifax Services for quite a few years, and he kind of saw the writing on the wall, and that if he stayed with that company, he would be working for the man. And so he branched off and got into entrepreneurship and opened up his own business, JAL Investigative Services.
Right.
And he did that in 1982. We built a house in 1980, and he officed out of the home. So he realized the benefits of officing out of your home, being your own boss. I grew up, from 10 years old to 23 when I left El Paso. But between the time I was 17 to 23, I worked for my dad. My first job was a courtesy clerk, aka sacker, at a local grocery store.
Okay.
And I had a lot of fun. I worked with a bunch of my buddies, but then I saw the kind of money that I could make working for my dad, and the boss was pretty cool. So
that's good.
Yeah. And, it made me realize that if you have the drive and you enjoy what you do, you can be your own boss.
Yeah.
And so I enjoyed it, but in order for me to take over, I guess you could say, my dad's legacy, my dad's his job, I would have to stay in El Paso because that's where the bucks were to be made.
Yeah.
So as much as I enjoyed doing it, and I saw the success that could follow in his footsteps, I decided to take the leap and get out of the investigative business and move to Austin. And I was walking into a bar back position, late nights, working for $2.16 an hour, but I saw that the tips were pretty good. So I said, well, what the heck, I'll go ahead and check it out and see what happens. And that's what got me basically into the food and beverage industry, was leaving my dad's investigative work and working behind the bar.
Was it an easy transition?
It was. I was ready to get out of El Paso. I was 23 years old, didn't have any girlfriends of the sort, and just kind of wanted to go to a really cool city. Everyone said Austin is great, and it's a hippieville. It was back then. It was a small town, and I think there's about 300 people plus that are moving there per day.
Wow!
So Austin, I was just back there last week, and it's grown immensely. But it allowed me to kind of be my own man, if you will, and.
There's a little bit entrepreneurial about that as well, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously you're working for someone else and but those checks really aren't that big of a deal because, like you said, the tips are good, right?
Yes.
And you're in control of how much money you make.
100%.
So if your service is right, then I loved it. I would still, I would work in the restaurant industry to this day. I've always said it, and everybody thinks I'm crazy. But there's one thing to having my own business, but there's another thing to working in the restaurant industry and being a server, and just the hospitality industry in general. But most of my the 6, I did a lot of years in the restaurant industry. I worked at a barbecue restaurant. I did worked at Pizzeria Uno. I've worked at numerous restaurants, but the 6 years at Spaghetti Factory is probably what taught me the most because I learned a lot about how to gain tips. I learned a lot about serving tables. I learned a lot about relationships with the hostess, relationship with the bartender, and how and the cooks, of course, and how all of that comes together. I learned a lot of Spanish in the restaurant industry as well. Yeah,
and it's funny because being from El Paso, when I was living there, it was about a 60 to 65% Hispanic population. It's gone up to, I think, 85% now.
I've heard.
So I was born and raised in a border city, got into the restaurant business where I'm in started in back of the house when it came into food. And my Spanish is terrible.
Okay.
Still? I think my brain just doesn't work properly when it comes to getting different languages and absorbing it.
Really?
I know how to order a shot of tequila or a cold beer or ask for directions, but that's about the extent of it.
Well,
that's hilarious.
That's all you need.
I'm not proud of it, but that's just the fact.
That's hilarious. You know what it is? I think it's kind of a crutch. I bet you that you have soaked up more Spanish than you think you do. I dream in Spanish at times, and it's crazy.
Oh, no kidding.
But if you have nobody there to translate and it's just you and the Spanish speaking person,
yes,
you'll figure it out. You're going to figure out what they're saying,
I'm
whether
gonna
it's
go
in
with that.
context or not. Yeah.
Just don't start here. Don't start swinging me out. Like, he's out the door. Mic's off.
I'm not bragging. I've lost a lot. I've had the Spanish speaking assistants over the years, and I have a Spanish speaking client call up, and I'm like, I don't know what he's saying. You say, you talk to him. Yeah. But if it was just me and that client, then I'd figure it out.
Very cool.
Yeah. Tell us more about mentors. Any other mentors that you've had over the years? Before we get into the true entrepreneurial experience, I want to hear who else has had influences over you, maybe after you moved away from your parents.
Sure. First and foremost, a guy by the name of Ernie Montoya. He was a general manager of the nightclub where I started as a barback.
Okay.
And he was sort of a bigger brother. He was one of those guys that hung out with a crew of ours in Austin. Mm-hmm. He was a couple years older. He was my boss, but he was also a good friend.
Great.
And he was taken under the wing of a gentleman by the name of Jamil, who owned the nightclub. And here I am working for tips and realizing that, I'd see the paycheck that Ernie would get, even though he shouldn't have shared it with me. He did share it with me. And I was like, God, there's incentive there,
Yeah.
So I busted my butt, and I became a barback to bartender within about 3 months. They put me at the back bar, and this is a nightclub that was on 5th and Trinity, and it had the biggest sound system, the biggest dance floor, the biggest everything, because Jamil had a ton of money, and he loved spending it.
Okay.
So once I got into the bartending position, I started watching seasoned bartenders. Mm-hmm. And said, you know what, I want to be able to fling a bottle and have some showmanship.
Okay.
While I'm pouring.
Yeah. I do that a little bit at the winery.
Yeah.
I have not a fancy pour. It's just a way to hold the bottle differently, and people go, "Oh, wow, that's cool." It's more convenient for me, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely
people.
cool. Yes.
So, yeah, I get that.
It gets a little extra tip on your tip jar too.
Yeah.
But I was tending bar for about 2 years, and a buddy of mine, Joe Fisk, who we grew up together, elementary school back in El Paso, he had moved to Austin about 2 years before I got there, and he got into the food business, into catering.
Okay.
And again, I was in a relationship at the time when I got there, but I was still young and dumb and wanted to do my thing, and so I started traveling with a company called Locations Catering. And the gentleman who owned that was Dave, and I saw the money that Dave was making. And it wasn't, I know I keep on saying money, but, as a young guy, I wanted to make as much as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. And in the food industry, it's tough to do. Mm-hmm. But in the catering industry, it's extremely easy to do.
Really?
Yes. And especially when it comes to production, because a lot of companies, these movie companies have a lot of money. And they'll throw it at you. And if you know that you have a budget of $15 per plate, whether it's eggs, bacon, and toast, or prime rib for dinner service, you're making the same amount of money. You know how many people you have to feed, so there's really not much waste whatsoever. Whereas if you open up a restaurant and the doors are open at 8 o'clock and they close at 10 o'clock at night, you could serve 100 people, you could serve 300 people, you don't know. So the margins are much better. Mm-hmm. And after realizing that you could travel, meet a bunch of people, and I feel like I'm pretty gregarious, but that sort of put me into a spot of having to be gregarious and meet the standards and wants and needs of filmmakers and these hoity-toity, Hollywood likes, if you will.
Everybody's got to eat.
Absolutely. Which, by the way, Matthew McConaughey, I'm very happy to know Zeke is a tequila lover.
That doesn't surprise me.
That's what I heard.
And when we wrapped one of the second movies I worked on called Rough Riders, he was one of the main actors in it, and we went to a bar in San Antonio and had a shot of tequila with him. So he was a cool cat. Yeah.
That is cool.
The guy doesn't like to fly. He used to. He may now, but he used to go from movie set to movie set, travel North America in a van. Yeah. Okay. He didn't want to fly.
All right.
Yeah. Keep on living.
That's funny. There are a number of guys I know even in the hip hop community that don't like to fly. So obviously, tour buses and everything is a lot. That happens a lot in the music industry. But overseas, one of them specifically, KRS-One, takes boats.
Really?
He's in demand worldwide, but he takes boats anytime he's crossing the ocean. He will not fly.
and if you have a big enough name, people will wait for you.
Oh, yeah.
Very good.
I think it's time to get to the reveal. You think?
I kind of wanted to ask him about school.
Ask him.
how do you feel about school? How'd you do in school? Were you a school person or?
Yeah, I did fine in high school, and I got into college. And my biggest drive for college was to get on the golf team at UTEP.
Yeah.
And I got on the golf team, and it lasted very shortly because I got into a car accident and I messed myself up pretty good.
Who are you, Tiger Woods?
What's that?
Tiger Woods.
Yeah, I know, no doubt. But I went to University of Texas El Paso for about 2 years, and it just wasn't my cup of tea.
Sure.
So that's when I left El Paso and decided to kind of do the OJT training, if you will, and realized that you can go two ways. You can either hit the grind and have a good chef or chefs take you under their wing, which is good. It's a great way of training. But I fell in love with food immediately because I was working with some guys on the movie sets that were spectacular with food. And I didn't realize that you can actually make food come alive. Every texturally. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do. So I wanted to learn from the best, and the best is back in the olden days, Escoffier, Old Brigade days. And Escoffier was, it's French cuisine. And so I made a phone call and contacted the CCA out here in California, San Francisco specifically, and wanted to come out to school here. And that's why I ended up in California. I couldn't afford to get a 1-bedroom flat in San Francisco at the time and go to school. But that year that I
still can't.
I can't. It's San Diego. I can't do that.
Yeah,
no San Francisco especially. Yeah,
no doubt. And luckily, the year I came out to San Diego, they had just opened an annex school of the CCA, and it was out in La Mesa. Then they slowly moved over to San Diego State. I don't think the school's here anymore, but it was a program. There was a 12-month program, allowed me to learn how to build a mother sauce and consommes and stocks and all that kind of fun stuff, and croquembouche and food that is a lot of fun and difficult to create, and unfortunately has kind of fallen to the wayside just because it requires a lot of labor of love.
Sure.
And in California, when you're paying $14 an hour for a prep cook, you want to get someone who's going to create these beautiful dishes. You have to pay a lot of money. There's just no money in it, unfortunately.
Yeah. The Same Business, Different Day podcast is brought to you by YourInsurancePlace.com. YourInsurancePlace.com is a conglomeration of two agencies, Network One Insurance and Bill Corley Insurance Agency. Their property and casualty agents and brokers specialize in commercial insurance of all types, general liability, workers' compensation, professional liability, auto, agribusiness, and much more. They also have great insurance carriers for your homes and autos. How do I know they are that good? Because I'm one of the agents. We believe in ourselves, and you will too. Contact us at yourinsuranceplace.com or call us direct at 866-384-0479. That's yourinsuranceplace.com.
The Film Hub is the future of co-working right in downtown Vista. Get energized to go to a safe work environment that is clean and sanitized. Create video content, live stream events, and all of your marketing material in our audio and video facility. Come and visit us at thefilmhubinc.com.
Introducing the Ramona Valley Gnome Trail Scavenger Hunt. The gnomes are coming and turning San Diego County wineries into an unplugged village. Look for gnomes hiding out and clues about the wineries posted on their tasting patios for the month of May. Everywhere you see a gnome is a good place to unplug and unwind. Spot all the gnomes, solve the clues, and enter a raffle for a chance to win a prize. Sign up for this free event and get your first clue at www.unplugcollaborative.org.
You know, I'm glad you asked that school question because I think that we just hit on something. We hit on something that's very important for our listenership, right? Just because school isn't necessarily for you. I mean, you went through it. You didn't just, as soon as you got out of high school, you gave it a shot, right? Sure. But you also didn't stop learning. Mm-hmm. You just stopped going to UTEP. You just stopped, that college career and found a different route. And you didn't stop your work ethic either.
No.
You kept pushing and you knew you were going to land somewhere. You just knew that school wasn't worth that time that you were putting into it
right.
at that point.
And with that being said, Zeke, I went to school to kind of run parallel to what I was doing with my dad. So I got into criminal justice. And it wasn't my cup of tea again. And it was kind of boring, if you will. And rather than look at a full gamut of, well, what could I do? Maybe I should get into business and whatnot. I decided to pack my bags and get out of town and do something different.
Sometimes that's the best thing for you. You say, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's going to be different.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was.
Yeah.
Lovely. So let's get into the reveal. Tony, obviously, clearly, is a restaurateur. He is the owner of the elegant restaurant Park House Eatery located in University Heights. If you ever get the chance to visit San Diego, don't miss visiting the historic University Heights, Hillcrest, North Park area. And don't miss visiting Tony's beautiful home conversion style restaurant. It's really like eating on someone's patio or in the living room, and the food is just as creative as it is delicious. I've been telling people for years about Park House Eatery, and I'm glad to finally be able to do it on this platform as well. And we've talked about this before with other guests, but there is nothing like an owner who was present in his establishment, meeting, greeting, and checking in on his clientele. So again, Tony, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Tell us about that. Let's jump into that first, right? How important it is to actually be present in your own business, and maybe even if you have any stories about people you've seen who weren't, or maybe where you learned that from, being able to touch your clients that way.
100%. My grandfather who got me into golf when I was 10. He was he was an entrepreneur himself. He was a musician. He did big band swing. He wrote all of his arrangements. He had 12 pieces in his band. He was on the road for many, many years. My mom was playing in sandboxes with the likes of Natalie Cole, Nat King Cole's daughter.
Right.
And my grandfather was one of the hardest working men I've ever met in my life. I have his hands. I have good, strong hands. I'm only 5'8", but I wear a size 11 shoe. And my grandfather was proud of making a living with his hands. In order to play piano, which was his instrument, you have to have big hands to play proper piano. And he said to me at a young age when I just got into the restaurant business, he says, Tony, you can have a busy restaurant, but if you're not there, it won't be successful.
Yes. Because
ultimately what you want to do is even though you just introduced my restaurant, Park House Eatery, I love that people say, hey, let's go to Park House for a great brunch or a wonderful dinner and a nice bottle of wine. But what I strive for is people to say, hey, let's go see Tony.
That's right.
And that's something that I hold with a lot of pride.
Yes.
And I've instilled in some of every person that works with me is very, very important. One of the hardest positions in a restaurant to fill and to do is to be a dishwasher. And one of the most important, aside from your server, is the first person you see, which is the host or hostess.
Yes.
And when I'm hiring someone, I say, look, if you love your job, then you will shine and you can bring your own personality out. And I need you to represent me when I'm not here. And I treat every guest, they're not a customer, but I treat every person as a guest. And I welcome them into my restaurant. And I treat them as though they are sitting at my house and having dinner.
That's right.
And that's what I expect and want out of all of my employees. And I am a super fortunate guy. I've been gone for about 7 to 9 days. I came home from vacation and played in a charity golf tournament for my daughter's school. And then Tuesday's my regular golf day. And my wife says, babe, are you going to go play golf today? You've been out for a while. Yeah, I'm going to go. They don't expect me back at the restaurant.
Yeah.
And what's nice is that because I've been able to have some solid, wonderful people behind me. I think I received 4 text messages while I was out in Austin, and not many phone calls. There weren't any fires or leaks that came about. So as much as I have worked hard and made Park House a success from when I took it over as a successful restaurant, and my employees, my chef specifically, Gilberto Villarreal, has just made my life so much easier because I'm the owner. I sign the paychecks, but they take ownership.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when I first bought Park House in 2005, I met Gil's son, Javier Villarreal, and he was 13 years old flipping pancakes next to his dad. And I thought, man, this is a killer dynamic, you know?
Yes.
You know, that's what it's about.
Yeah, that's an important thing to establish, I think, in any business, especially in a restaurant, that idea of, you know, the host has to show that they enjoy what they do. And that comes from leadership.
Yes.
If you didn't have that personality, it would not reflect through your employees.
That's
and
right.
so it's important to lead that way, lead by example.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll take out the trash. I'll wipe down urinals and I'll greet you at the door. Yeah.
Love it. I love it. You know, it was really important for us to have a restaurant owner on the podcast. We haven't had one yet, you know, and especially during these times. There had been so much going on over the past year, or more than a year, right? And, you know, I wanted to make sure that we had this type of a conversation where we could see how you were doing, see how the restaurant business is doing, see how things have changed, you know, how the laws have affected things, and, you know, wherever things have picked up. You know, it's kind of good to just try to get a full understanding of what's been going on in the hospitality industry in general, but restaurants specifically. We'd seen a lot of them go by the wayside, and it's so unfortunate, and it's so sad that, you know, we couldn't just reach out and save them. You know, folks right around the corner where we're trying to, like, you know, just go buy some food to go, just to, you know, see if we can help keep them in business. And you know, it's not enough food. It's not enough, you know, that, you know, their capacity is so much smaller. Everything had changed. And I know things are getting better now, but, you know, can you give us a little bit about that experience?
Absolutely. You know, when we got shut down on March the 17th, 2019, it was tough. I mean, I went from opening up and having a regular brunch, and next thing you know, I'm sending people home and shutting down the restaurant for a couple of days and not knowing what the heck was going on.
Mm-hmm.
We took a few days to kind of absorb everything and realized that we were going to, initially we thought this was going to last about 60 to 90 days.
I remember.
Unbeknownst to us, it was going to be over a year. And, you know, I felt it's hard to separate, what you should do is separate, but it's hard to separate friends and family and business. And my employees are my family, and I needed to make that decision as to, you know, do I keep the doors open to try and keep their jobs going, or do I shut it down and call it a day and go from there? But there was so much uncertainty, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to keep the lights on. So I was very fortunate. I am very fortunate. The landlords of my building didn't need me to pay full rent. And I understand that a lot of places that haven't been able to make it through this pandemic were kind of held victim to having to pay that full bore rent, even though they weren't bringing in really any kind of money whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I was able to shut down all of my accounts and kind of streamline the business, reduce the menu. I did takeout for about 2 months and worked off of my existing food that I had. And, you know, it's interesting. You try and streamline any kind of business that you're in. You want to try and make sure that you're working smarter and not harder.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this has taught a lot of restaurateurs how to kind of reconfigure our business model.
Are you saying there's an upside?
There is an upside. You know, before, specifically in California, before this pandemic hit, we were seeing that they were passing the bill to make it $15 an hour within the next 5 years. And when I first bought Park House in 2005, I was paying $6.25 an hour as a manageable number. Mm-hmm. Now we're at 14, shortly to move to 15 next year. And in order to still try and make money, you've got to reduce your cost of goods. You have to reduce your labor. And one way of doing that, restaurants are going to sort of a self-serve industry. You're trying to alleviate, and it sounds terrible, but alleviate the connection of people, your server coming to you, doing service to where you walk up to a desk and and order your food and get a number and sit down, and it takes care of a lot of labor. And I think we're being forced to go that route at this point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Prior to COVID, what are some of the tough times to own?
That's
own
a good
restaurant?
question. Like, what was the worst times before that? Like, what's the difference? Tough times wise.
Before COVID, you have your controllables, and you have to try and maintain those, and labor is huge. Your profit margin in restaurants is
very slim.
It's very slim, and we spoke about this before we got on air, Zeke, and that you don't make much food, or you don't make much money in food, and you kind of go back to the old adage that it's a labor of love, and so the biggest components that that made it hard is if you had a high rent, if you had high labor, and if you didn't control and manage your business. If you weren't there, there's a lot of cash, there's a lot of theft. You can have the greatest people in the world working for you, but unfortunately, if you're not watching every single transaction, stuff falls through the cracks. And so for me, unfortunately, the only way for me to find I got to make money is I got to go back to the old days of slinging liquor, and I got to get a liquor license, in which I'm fortunate enough to say that I will be occupying one very soon. That if you have a liquor license nowadays, that's where you can make money in the business. Food is almost becomes secondary for me. It's hard to cut the umbilical cord of wanting to.
You clearly have a passion for food.
I have a passion for it, and I derive so much happiness by putting a plate of food down and seeing someone take a bite. And as my daughter would go, she just kind of leans back and closes her eyes and gives a thumbs up, and you see that, and it warms your heart.
I dance.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
I dance when I get food.
Yeah. By all means. So I think now that we're in this pandemic and we're still on the backside of it, hopefully. I think we've learned a lot, and we've come to realize that you have to take a lot of care and you have to nurture your business and hold on to the people that have made it through this with you and take care of them. And it'll all kind of come full circle. It's always going to be difficult to make money in the restaurant business. I think the one way that you can really get to the point where you're making a lot of money is in numbers. Once you get to 2 or 3 locations, again, you can streamline that, but you almost have to. And it'll allow you to breathe a little bit easier if you will.
But that's hard, right?
It is.
I mean, because we've been talking for years about, Tony's like, I got an eye on this new spot. I don't think about it. I haven't pulled the trigger yet. It looks kind of good, but, and I, as you know, I have other restaurant clientele, and so we have these conversations all the time, and it's kind of the same thing. It's just like, I'm thinking about this spot, or I think this area needs breakfast. It's like a location thing. Sure. There's a staffing thing. There's a menu thing. There's so much that goes into opening up a restaurant, and I'm not trying to discourage our listeners who might want to go into that industry at all. Sure. But like you said, it's a labor of love, and the margins can get slim. I mean, there's so much to be discussed there. And so you're saying you're making more money if you double and triple your locations, but what all goes into doubling and tripling your locations?
Sure. And I have a good foundation. I think that that's anything else, whether it's a personal relationship or a business relationship, it's all about the foundation. And the foundation consists of a few things. You have to have a good lease. You have to make sure you're not paying too much. And you have to make sure that you are in the proper demographic for what you want to do, by all means. And that will catapult you and allow you to get bigger and whatnot. I've had business partners in the past. I've had some good business partners. I had business partners when I bought Park House, and they were great.
Okay.
3 of them specifically because they were silent.
Okay. Yeah.
But then I've had bad business partners.
You're gonna have to expand on that,
okay.
Tony.
Okay.
You're gonna have to expand because right now, again, as Alyssa explained to you, the mission of the podcast, and actually, I think there was another. Remember Dr. Hunter, who specifically said, be careful who you go into business with, or go into business by yourself. Don't bring on partners.
Right.
So, Tony, I think you are the first in all of our shows that has brought up silent partners.
Yes.
What is a silent partner?
They don't have really a day-to-day say in what we put on the menu, basically what you're doing on a daily basis, how you're spending the money. They just basically want to see a profit. And our silent partners were not in the city of San Diego.
Okay.
So that made it a little bit easier. Some silent partners like to, have their name on the bar stool and have free drinks and all that kind of fun stuff, that's fine if you're getting backed financially and you're making them happy by putting money in their pocket, then that's okay. If you have a vision and you want to do something that you want to do, when you have conflicting personalities and other visions that are going to make your vision difficult, that's where partnerships become hard. By all means. I have a couple friends who have business partners and they thrive, and I have some friends who have business partners and they're headaches to each other. And I've been there. I had a little place called Rudy's Cafe. It was a turnkey operation, got in with a business partner. And for the first few months, we had a very parallel vision. But unfortunately, he went a different route. Okay. Decided not to work as hard as I wanted to work. And it's tough. It's tough. And they say once you have a bad relationship, partnership, you'll never do it again. I jumped from a partnership into a partnership with 4 different people. Again, 3 of them were silent partners. Yeah. And the gentleman who hired me and gave me a percentage of Park House was my old general manager at Wolfgang Puck. So he saw the good in me. I saw the good in him. It worked out well. He has a restaurant in Coronado. And when we were business partners with Park House, he would pop in a couple times a week. And he put me at the front, and he said, basically, your job is to be at the front door and say hello and goodbye and make people feel like a guest and not a customer. And he's very personable, a lot of fun, and we have the same ideas and ideals about how to run a business. So there were times he would come in and he would voice his opinion, and I would go, I don't know if that's going to work. For instance, just a quick one. We make our French fries in-house at Park House. Okay. Right. We russet potatoes, we cut them by hand. We had a little machine that is fastened to the wall, like in and out. So you got to make sure the labor's not too much on it. But he wanted to see if we could cut labor, and so we went to a Cisco brand French fry, and within 2 weeks, I had about 30 people to say, "What did you do to your fries?" And I said, "I'm sorry, Olive, but this is not going to work." So again, it's when you're by yourself, it's your dime, so you live and die by your decisions. So it can be stressful, and it's nice to have sounding boards, but I find that in my managers and my chef, because that they're not partners, but hopefully one day they will be.
And your guests too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They're sounding boards, right?
Yeah, by all means. Yeah.
So how do you pick a good business partner? What do you look for specifically? You've gone through both. You've had bad and good and maybe some in between. And so let's say you were looking into a new business. What would you look for in a partner? I
would want to have someone that has the qualities that I don't have. Opposites attract, the whole yin and yang.
That's right.
By all means. If I have a strength in one particular part, whether it be a creation of a dish, and I have a partner who enjoys the financial aspect of it, I think that's a good partnership. If I have a buddy of mine who hired me back at Sing Sing Dueling Piano Bar back in the day when I was working with Rock Bottom Brewery, and I walked into his office and he had his feet up on the desk, and he says, "Are you Tony?" I said, "Yeah." "Are you Eric?" He said, "Yeah, I am." So at that particular moment, the interview started, and he kept his feet on the desk, and I was thinking, I like this guy.
Hi, I'm Jeff Fox, founder of StarFox Media. We're a digital marketing and video production company that focuses on serving small businesses here in Vista, California. We have the team and all of the equipment necessary to produce, film, edit, and distribute your podcast to as many people as possible. For more information, you can reach out to us via email at info@starfox.media or give us a call at 760-385 3117. Let StarFox Media help you tell your brand story today.
The San Diego craft beer industry has proven to be incredibly resilient. Regardless of tier, they're following all guidelines to ensure the safety of their loyal customers and staff. They want you to feel safe coming out, enjoying a beer, or picking it up to go. Breweries are open and welcoming guests into a sense of normalcy through a great craft brew. While resilient, the beer industry isn't immune to the effects of service limitations and decreased foot traffic. They need your help to stay open and continue serving the craft beer they're famous for. If you're looking for ways to support your favorite local brewery, stop in for a beer, grab some merch, or take some home to share or enjoy later. Cheers.
North County Daily Star is the leading source for news and community information along the 78 corridor. It's free to subscribe and it is updated daily. Look for us on your mobile device or computer at ncdailystar.com.
The Vista Chamber of Commerce is a proud supporter of the Same Business, Different Day podcast. We support our business members with promotion and marketing, business referrals, educational opportunities, workforce development, and advocacy. Check us out online at vistachamber.org.
We worked really well together. And for years, we've said that he owns a place, Guava Beach Bar and Grill down in Mission Beach. And we're the best of friends.
Mm-hmm.
We share the same vision. We want to make every single person's time and visit special.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what it's about. Someone who has empathy, someone who cares about what they do,
Mm-hmm.
and is a hard worker.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can find that in someone, then by all means, it'd be a prime candidate for me to get into partnership with.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let's talk about Yelp.
Okay.
A lot of people, I mean, I know
That's not.
Yeah, right. I used to be an avid Yelp user, but now having worked on the other side in the service industry, I'm like, I don't want to look at Yelp. I'll make up my own opinion.
Sure.
But, how do you handle a bad review on Yelp?
It's interesting. Good question. And it's a platform. I mean, I understand Yelp, and it allows people to voice their opinion and get on their soapbox for that time that they're sitting in front of their computer. And some people have a Yelp elite status, which means they go out a lot and they have a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
And I found myself, I don't like putting any bad energy or energy into something that doesn't give me something back that's good.
Right.
And with Yelp, the way it's managed, you can go in and you can put a rebuttal or say, this isn't exactly how it happened. Unfortunately, it's almost a little bit too late because it's already been exposed to many people that read it. And you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
I used to put a lot of energy into it and get mad. And my wife would be like, hey, don't worry about it. It's no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 4-star review on Yelp. And several years ago, I had a guy who came to me and said, we can help you with your Yelp platform, your Yelp reviews, and it takes 16 5-star reviews to alleviate a 1-star review. And I was finding that I was spending money to try and get my 4-star to 4.5 star. And it pulled me away from what's really important. And what's really important is you do your best.
That's right.
To treat everyone as good as you possibly can and make them feel at home.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have someone that no matter how, if you treat them well, they're going to find something wrong, yeah, that's fine. Let them get them. Yeah. So I don't put as much energy into Yelp as I used to.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think as a business owner, whether you're in the restaurant industry or you're selling insurance, just do your best and know that, when you put your head on the pillow, that's what you've done. And don't worry about what social media platforms.
That's really
have to say
what it
about
is, right?
Yeah.
And so many folks nowadays are complaining about social media and the effects of it. Now, of course, there are, like you just said, there are people out there who are saying, I'm the marketing genius and I can fix all of your social media problems. Right. But you will always get some of those comments out there. You will always have some people who have something to say, whether or not they're just trolling you or they just left and they're just writing down exactly what they're feeling at this moment. But if they had taken some time and put some thought to it, then maybe they would see things more clearly and realize, hey, this really wasn't the server's fault. That really wasn't, it really wasn't as big of a deal as when I was writing with my current emotions, know. Right. So you're right. You kind of, do your best and forget the rest, right?
Yeah, and with Yelp, you can't. if someone complains about you, gives you 1-star review and said this, and this happens, and I get it. There's times when we drop the ball
Sure.
2 or 3 times on the same table, and people do have a bad experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I guarantee you, if you come to me at that time and say, hey, this is what happened, I will do my best to try and make you feel better before you leave.
Right.
And try and hopefully make you a raving fan and have you come back and redeem ourselves.
Right.
You can't do that when then they've left the
Silently.
building. You know?
You can't
Absolutely.
track them down. I'm going to find you.
But that's the sensitive thing about food though too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, of all things, to be yelping about food, because so many, these hungry people, like they are, a lot of people are very emotional when it comes to their food.
Yes. It's interesting too, with Yelp and reviews. If you look at the traffic on Yelp
Mm-hmm.
before the pandemic and over the past year, people are very reluctant to complain about their experience because they know, they have empathy, that they know that we have really been put through the ringer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the last thing they want to do is just complain about the situation.
And that reminds me of even, what I've seen over the past year. Like, have you had to cut back on menu items and stuff
Yes.
as well? Yeah, because, you can't just be bringing in all of this food and maybe you could sell it, maybe you can't. You're at a lower capacity, all of these, other reasons. And some people are said they took such and such off the menu, and they'd be upset about that, right? So you've got to make these changes, and regardless of accepting a complaint, which right now you're trying to stay in business.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing is people have not been able to offer seafood. Because the shelf life is just much smaller than shorter than other
like the
proteins.
margins weren't slim enough.
Yeah, no doubt. And people are going to the grocery store, they're having to stay relegated to their 4 walls, and they're having to cook their own, and it's kind of changed a lot for everyone. So people see the difference in prices, and so they get it, they understand that we're having to juggle with many more balls and less hands.
Right. Fast food. We had Shane Paul.
Shane Paul, yeah.
He's got 7 Jack in the Boxes.
Okay.
Down there in San Diego area, and of course he should be considered a restaurant. So I say you're the first restaurant. I shouldn't disparage Shane Paul in that way. He did come in and he talked franchises, right? And as many restaurants that you've worked in or considered having, did fast food ever cross your mind?
It has crossed my mind.
I mean, during this time, right? During the pandemic, these guys have been thriving.
Absolutely. Well, when you have a fast food restaurant, most of your food is made in a commissary. So there's consistency across the board. It alleviates high labor cost. I, again, go back to my love of food, and I just have a hard time with doing a bag and boil type of operation.
I respect it. I respect it. It's just that, I guess during this time, people, they, like he said, they would be buying in bulk, and, they go to the drive-through. There's less human contact and all of that. I think that's kind of what he was getting at, but he was just like, things are better than ever.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild to me. I'd never expected it.
So how'd you adapt Park House for COVID? Once you started opening back up, the outdoor situation, the limited capacity, what did you do to continue to survive?
Well, I would say the biggest thing was to build a parklet. And the owners of the building, they own the restaurant, they own the house behind it, and there's a house that is right next to Park House. So it allowed me to take 60 linear feet, 8 feet from the curb, and put about 24 extra butts and seats. So my capacity before COVID was 81 people.
Okay.
And when we were relegated to outdoor only, socially distancing the table still, I was right around 50 to 53 people.
Okay.
So, it was tough to do because you have now created an extra 20 to 25 steps to take the food out to the tables. And I just have a hard time with putting my guest out in the street, with the cars flying by a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you got to do what you got to do to survive, by all means. When we first were only able to serve to-go food, my menu that I served before went down to about a third of what we offered, and adapted to where we didn't have as many hours. We were only working 5 days a week. We were serving dinner until 7 o'clock. Normally we're open until 9:30. So we reduced the hours, reduced my payroll. I just, right now I have 26 people on payroll. I was down to 4 people, including myself. Again, back to streamlining, just cutting costs as much as you possibly can, reducing portion sizes as much as you can. You don't want it to be obvious, but I think people understood that we had to try and, they were understanding that we had to do what we had to do to survive.
That's right.
You know, and if you've been to Park House, like I know Zeke has, you know, you're generally walking out with a to-go box. So if we
the
cut,
portions were big. Anyway.
If we cut the portions a couple ounces here or there, you were still left with a full belly.
Yeah.
Did it feel worth it at the end of it all? Well, we're still in it, but as we've continued. And what have you learned?
You know, absolutely worth it.
Okay.
Genetically, I'm fortunate in that I don't have a whole lot of gray hair, but if I'm sure there's quite a few in there from over the past year.
Sure.
But the crew that I have had with me since the beginning of the shutdown until now, they're still with me. And the people who are back on my payroll are all original employees. And this is one of the biggest fights that we're having to fight now, is trying to get people back on to work, you know, because now we're able to open up and we need more people to get on the payroll. We can't find people to work.
Really?
But the base of my employees are back. And they were reluctant in the beginning because they were worried about contracting COVID.
Sure.
You know, because the media would say, you know.
And there was also the unemployment that some of these folks were collecting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, video games and chilling in your
Start to get used to that life.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it was, for me, I didn't really have to deal with the whole emotional side of it. You know, not being able to go somewhere in the morning and have my business. You know, I didn't have to shut down and not do anything. So I feel like I was fortunate in that I could still have some sort of semblance of normalcy, if you will.
That's right.
You know, by all means. And at 50 years of age, I mean, having to resituate and figure out what am I going to do? I can't go on the PGA Tour at this point. And, the restaurant business is looking very difficult to get into. So I wanted to stick it out and see if I possibly could, and I'm glad I did, because with the likes of some financial money coming down through the PPP and whatnot, and it's worth it for sure. I'm sitting here talking to you guys, so
that's right. Well, you know, I'm going to donate some of these gray hairs to you. Okay. If you're 50, I got some for you.
I'm glad to hear it was worth it. You know, that's part of the reason I wanted to talk to someone who owns a restaurant right now. You know, you were thrown just a horrible situation and told to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so having to go through all these steps and loopholes and just trying to survive, you know, I'm curious what everyone's gone through. And so to hear, like, yeah, it was hell and it sucked, but
absolutely
you survived and it was worth it. So,
and with that being said, you know, I survived, I think mostly because my locals.
Love it.
They, we're entrenched in a community that is business, homes and business, and people would, you know, want to get out of the house, so they had to walk over to Park House and get their food to go. And I have regulars that I see 3-4 times a week.
Oh, good.
And without them, I probably wouldn't be saying that I still have my business.
I hear that.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. We got to throw them all a party one of these days.
Indeed.
I wish I was still a local. I'd definitely be there.
Yeah. Let's do my book corner.
Book corner.
So I'm a big book nerd. I read constantly, so I like to, take in what people recommend. So anything that, it doesn't have to be books, media in general, but if it's a book, that's what I like. That's influenced you, inspired you. You look back on it and think, oh, this is what I think about when I'm succeeding, or just a book you like.
Okay. Everything from Bob Marley's story. Be true to your heart. Be true to yourself. And do what makes you feel good. I mentioned before Tiger Woods. And, a large part of why I got Tiger Woods' book is because I'm a golfer. But I also wanted to find out more about the person. Someone who has a lot of drive. He's had to overcome a lot of obstacles. And a lot of obstacles that were put into his path, not because of him, but because of his upbringing.
Right.
And the expectations. It's made me realize as a father that, I want to nurture my daughter and make sure that she's happy doing whatever she wants to do, whether it's go ride her bicycle, on the weekend, do well in school, and be who she wants to be when she is older.
Mm-hmm.
No pressure. Mm-hmm. I wanted her to play golf right now, but it's not something that's interesting to her. And maybe one day it will be, and maybe one day it won't be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
By all means. Being in the business, I get what's called Restaurant Week. And so I read those magazines often. And, I am not a big reader, and I don't I don't sit down with a novel and get entrenched and get lost in it. But maybe I should.
Everyone has it. So long as you have the thing that relaxes you, no one should feel guilty for not doing that one thing. It's you have your thing. So my thing is reading, but I don't push it on other people.
My thing is I enjoy stretching and working out and being with my family and going to the park and just being, by all means.
Yeah, and you're gaining that knowledge. I mean, you've gained so much knowledge in food, and you've got so much to give. Maybe you should write a book.
Ooh.
Since you don't want to read. Well, you could write one.
Let's talk about it. I may need some help with some of the editing, but
I'm an editor.
Yeah. We're here for you.
Yeah.
We're here for you. We're really thankful that you were here today, Tony. I mean, this was a great conversation, and I'm glad that we finally got it done. I'm really excited to get this out to the listeners because there's so much good information here. If there is any more wisdom that you want to impart, upon those that might be listening, and trust me, I mean, there are business owners that listen to this as well. They're not just aspiring entrepreneurs, but some of these business owners like to either tell their full story or hear the full stories of others to see how did they get to where they are today, right? Sure. And so, if you want to throw out a couple of last words for her, we'd appreciate it.
By all means, trust in yourself, and don't put too much pressure on yourself.
Love it.
The day is only 24 hours long, and social media has made people want to do more than is really physically possible because you can't do everything, and the only way to do what you want to do and be successful is on a daily basis is to create balance. And in having balance, you have to put your energy in many different areas. So surround yourself with positive thinking people, with fun people, and again, just take care of you, and the rest will work itself out.
I love that. Yeah. I like that a lot. And I like that you brought up the social media aspect of it because everybody's not going to give you a like. No. So stop searching for it.
And that's okay.
Yes, and that's okay. Alyssa, you want to give some contact?
Yes. So the best way to get to know Tony in person and what he does is to visit the restaurant Park House Eatery located in University Heights. The website is parkhousesd.com. They're on Facebook and Instagram at Park House Eatery and on Twitter at parkhousesd.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks so much,
Thanks, Tony.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Same Business Different Day podcast. Special thanks to StarFox Media for video production and James Russell on music production. Please like and subscribe to the Same Business Different Day podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.